The Emperors Astartes have earned quite the reputation over the past 20,000 years or so that they have served the Imperium. But amongst these demigod warriors, a select few rise the ranks and become the stuff of legends. Most of these figures are celebrated and venerated across the entire Imperium, like angelic figures serving the God Emperor in his holy crusades. But there are exceptions to this rule. There are some heroes forced to remain in obscurity, operating in secret. A chief example of this phenomenon lies within the Sacred Brotherhood of the Grey Knights. Amongst these demon-hunting psykers, there is one man who has earned a reputation of purity and honor that makes him an exemplar of the chapter, and their ideals as the holiest of Astartes. Castellan GARRAN Crow. GARRAN Crow is a Castellan champion, and as such serves as the leader of the Order of the Purifiers. The Purifiers are an elite group within the Grey Knights, tasked with guarding the ancient vaults on their chapter's homeworld of Titan and keeping watch over the evils that lie within. As such, purifiers must be selected only from the purest and most sanguine of the Grey Knights, and would be trusted to be wholly incorruptible, no matter the promise or temptations placed before them by the evil entities and relics that they would study and guard. Crow, as leader of this order, is tasked with bearing the weight of their most heavy burdens, to include the wielding of an immensely powerful demon-infused sword, and he's entrusted this duty due to being considered the purest and most incorruptible of all Grey Knights. So much so that chapter leaders theorize that he is completely immune to the temptations of the warp. Crow is so unique in his stalwart nature that the Grandmasters of the chapter theorize that he may possess a dormant fragment of the Emperor within his gene seed that is awoken within him, allowing him to exhibit abilities like his immunity to the warp that his brothers do not possess. But now that you know a little bit of what makes GARRAN such an interesting Astartes, let me tell you his story. In M41, Crow served as a young recruit to the ranks of the Elite Purifiers and served under the command of Castellan Merritt Gavalan, an honored elder of the chapter and the wielder of the Demon Blade of Antweir. Crow would be deployed alongside his commander to the Sandava system in response to a demonic outbreak that originated from an ancient mass that reeked of Slaaneshi influence. Soon enough, the mass would find its way into the hands of the Cardinal of the Sandava system, a chief elder of the church there, and corrupt his mind. Through the Cardinal, the mask would then summon its master, Emne Salath, a keeper of secrets. In response, the Grey Knights would be sent immediately to deal with such an immense threat, and upon landing on Sandava II, they would discover that the Cardinal's Cathedral, which once served as hallowed imperial grounds, had turned into a horrifying living beast. In the heat of battle with the Keeper of Secrets, Castellan Merritt, after years of bearing the weight of the insidious Blade of Antweir, began to falter, just enough for the Keeper to take notice and trick his mind into releasing his grasp on the sword. Antweir would then possess the governor of Sandava II, Otto Glaz, who was present, and then slay the Castellan as revenge for having kept him prisoner for so long. Crow would rally the remaining purifiers to him and take command in the heat of battle, holding the line against both Emne Salath and Antweir. Eventually, Crow would be locked in combat with the possessed governor and manage to defeat him, taking the Blade of Antweir for himself and slaying him and the Keeper of Secrets with his newfound power. In light of this victory and the tragic loss of his mentor, the chapter would instate Crow as his successor and the Warden of the Blade of Antweir. Leaving the service of Sandava II, the chapter would elect to exterminatus the planet, seeing as it was too far gone with chaos corruption. And Crow would then be deployed to Sandava III in pursuit of another greater demon of Slaanesh known as Varangalax. He would lead his contingent of Grey Knights into combat and with his new blade slay the demon, seemingly eliminating the chaos threat within the Sandava system. Later in M41-888, GARRAN would be deployed alongside the strike force of the Iron Helm to the planet of Birmingham to stop a demon invasion. Okay, before I get into the rest of this, really, GW, Birmingham? Imagine that interaction.
We are here to invade you and turn you into a demon world.
No, in Birmingham.
Never mind.
But, like I was saying, the demon invasion was being led by Skulltaker and his Blood Crusade. Their intention was to enact hellish rituals that would convert Birmingham into a demon world. Crow and his men would be deployed directly into the heart of the demonic hordes with the intention of toppling key demons to interrupt the assault and disrupt the rituals. In the heat of combat, Crow made a difficult judgment call, realizing no one but him had the chance of beating the infamous Skulltaker. In an effort to minimize casualties, he challenged the demon to single combat. As their duel raged, Crow realized the demon's immense strength could best him, so he used a vial of the Emperor's crystallized tears he had on his person, a holy relic, and consecrated the ground they fought on to give himself better odds. This managed to weaken Skulltaker just enough to force a stalemate between the two mighty warriors, and Crow would continue the standstill duel until his Grey Knights could defeat the demon horde without their leader at the helm. After the defeat of his army, Skulltaker would be forced to leave, and Crow would claim victory that day. Several years later, Crow would return to the Sandava system on Sandava III, real creative naming conventions here, GW, by the way. During his operations on the surface, the catastrophic 13th Crusade would be happening across the galaxy, in which Abaddon would destroy key planets, restricting the spread of chaos through the Eye of Terror, and in doing so would create a galaxy-wide tear in reality known as the Great Rift. Cutting the galaxy in half, one side would be cast in darkness, cut off from the Emperor's light from his place on Holy Terra, and the other would still bask in it. The dark half would be dubbed Imperium Nihilus, and as such, the Noctis Aeterna would officially begin. GARRAN Crow and his strike force were in the heat of battle when this happened, and the Inky Shadow would turn a normal battle against the forces of Hell into a desperate fight to survive. As chaos began to rapidly consume the planet, the responsibility to command the Imperial forces on the surface would fall to Crow. He would rally his Grey Knight forces and the remaining Sisters of Battle, led by the canonist Sethano, to hold a defensive position in the Scoria Hive. In spite of the seemingly endless hordes of demons, Crow would manage to maintain order within the city walls, while killing demons and managing to beat back a warband of Noise Marines that came to join the hellish onslaught on the Emperor's holy warriors. As the siege went on, the Noise Marines would begin spreading a cacophonic chaos song that would drive the Hive's population mad. Crow knew in spite of their heroic effort, this would eventually break their forces, and in an act of mercy, he detonated a massive explosion to consume the city in holy flame, denying the archenemy its victims and granting the citizenry a quick death. After managing to escape the planet's surface with his marines and the Sisters of Battle that had survived the siege, Crow would re-establish contact with his chapter after meeting with the Third Brotherhood's Grand Master Aldrich Voldus aboard the strike cruiser Exorus Dominus. Upon arrival, Crow would learn that years had passed for the greater galaxy during his time on Sindava 3, and the planet had been hundreds of light years from its original location in the star system. Crow would be sent back to their homeworld of Titan due to his exposure to infernal powers on Sindava 3, and would dedicate himself to researching the ancient tomes in their hallowed libraries in an attempt to understand what had happened. Eventually, Crow would be released from Titan after his pure and sanguine status was assured to the elders of the chapter, but he would be kept in isolation aboard the strike cruiser Tindaris. During Crow's stay there, Tindaris would be navigating the Nakaman Gauntlet under the command of Justicar Styre, and they would discover that more systems in their region of space had also been moved in a similar manner as to what had happened in the Sindava system. Slaaneshi magics were suspected, and the Strike Force would press on to Angriff Prime as they suspected its governor would be the next target of the Slaaneshi forces at work. Upon investigation, it was discovered that the governor had been consumed by madness and fell to the temptations of chaos, allying himself with a band of Noise Marines led by a chaos champion known as Tarotus. Using their infernal powers, they opened a warp rift in the capital city of the planet and began yet another mass invasion. In the battle that would follow, the Grey Knights, led by Crow once more, would find the instrument being used to displace entire star systems and subject them to the vile schemes of the Dark Prince Slaanesh. As Crow led the assault, cutting through the hordes to get to the device's core, the great demon known as the Mask would appear and do battle with the leaders of the Grey Knight forces, Crow and Styre. The Mask's fiendish dances were nearly enough to overcome the noble Grey Knight warriors, until the Sisters of Battle would come to their aid once more, like when on Sindava years ago, and managed to interrupt the Slaaneshi songs. Crow, however, still held in sway with the Mask, learning its dance while it believed it had one influence over him. Understanding the flow of its vile movements, Crow would predict its next steps and strike it down with the Blade of Antweir, banishing the Mask back to the warp and leaving the forces of chaos in disarray. Seizing their opportunity, they would push onto the device's core and destroy it. After eliminating the ritual, the Grey Knights would then carve their way through the feral hordes in an attempt to return to their strike cruiser Tindaris and escape with their lives. As they fled, a Grey Knight Justicar known as Drake would sacrifice himself so that Crow could survive as they boarded the ship, and a warp storm would promptly consume the planet, leaving Crow to ponder the entire affair and its nefarious intent. The last we've heard of any operations Crow is undertaking entail him going on rescuing operations to exfiltrate Grey Knights who were unable to escape a demon world known as Sortarius after the chapter retreated and withdrew any forces they could. As for what comes next in this legend story, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. I think it's safe to say that GARRAN Crow is one of the most underrated Billy Badass Space Marines in the setting, and has some of the wildest feats under his belt, all while being written in such a way as I don't think anyone would call BS or anything on his accomplishments. He's definitely not a Gary Stu. That is unlike other notable Grey Knights, which we'll cover in later videos, trust me. But what do you think of GARRAN Crow and his story thus far? Make sure to let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.